Welcome to Transforming and Thriving
with best friends Brooke, Stacie, and Neelia.
Podcast dedicated to women sharing their inspirational stories.
Hey there, everyone. We're so excited to be here for another episode. I'm Neelia.
And I'm Stacie. I'm absolutely thrilled to be joined today by not only a dear friend, but an incredible human being, Natasha Drukarova Denmark. Mama of two, wifey, tenure-track professor, lover of food, travel, history, medicine, running, and all things family. Natasha and I first met when we worked together years ago at a behavioral healthcare center in San Clemente. We hit it off immediately and became self-proclaimed work wives, taking daily walk and coffee breaks together. Or actually, should I say dirty chai breaks? We've remained close over the years, and I've been most impressed by her dependability, her optimistic attitude, thoughtfulness, and truly how grounded she remains in the midst of chaos.
Thank you so much for being here today, Natasha. How are you today?
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here with my work wifey for lifey and Neelia and everybody else. I'm doing well. I have a million things going on, but I'm glad that I can take this break to be here with you ladies. So thank you.
Well, we appreciate it. And we are so glad that you are here and we can just dive right in. So, what comes to mind when you think back to an experience that had a really profound impact on you?
Yeah, so when first of all, when you guys came out with this podcast, I was like, oh my gosh, let me listen to all the episodes. So I have listened to all of them. And I feel like everyone has such an amazing story. I feel like for me, it's something that started in my childhood. And I feel like I still kind of navigate it to this day. But for me, it was coming to America, like the movie, but coming to the United States. My family emigrated here on a religious asylum when I was 6 years old. So we came from the former Soviet Union, which is now obviously broken up into different countries, but we came from Belarus and we navigated kind of the pathway here to the US. And it was not like hopping on a plane and coming here, but more so we spent a few months in Vienna, Austria, and then we spent another few months in Italy. And it was like living with all other refugee families. So we were in the refugee status for almost a year, basically getting across to the US. And then when we got here, my dad had come a year before us, but in the same pathway. So it was just my mom and I during this travel for almost a year coming to the States. And we went to New Jersey, we lived in the projects, and then my parents decided one day, like, there's nothing here for us. So they just packed up our like little car and drove cross country to California with no money, no apartment, no nothing. So that was interesting. And we ended up living with like cousins for a few months. And it was just I think an interesting journey, but I think what I take from it is at the time, it was very much like assimilate, assimilate, assimilate. So I would watch Saved by the Bell to learn English. And this is why you probably can't detect an accent because I talk like Kelly and Zach. But that was like the whole thing, assimilating. And it was only in like my master's program. So literally like decades later that I started going back and like seeing what my true culture is. And I've always experienced it, right? Because at home I have to speak Russian with my grandparents, my parents, we always celebrated holidays. But when I was going through like friendships and things like that, none of my friends really knew like that we immigrated here. They didn't know that we are religious refugees. They didn't know that, English is not my first language. So I went through a lot of life of just like trying to fit in the best. And so it took a really long time to really be like, okay, this is who I am. And yes, all of these other parts are me also, but just stepping into like who I am as a person, as a professional, now as a mom. And I think that like a lot of that comes into my world now, where I try to teach my kids, that it's okay to be who you are. It's okay to share with the world, where you come from, all of the practices and the things that you've learned at home, all of the different cultures that you're a part of. And obviously, like, it's my background is one of the reasons why I married who I married, why I have the friends that I have, why I've pursued the education and the careers that I've pursued. So I think it's just such a huge part. And so every little thing that I do, it just comes back to the beginning of where I came from, essentially.
Well, I commend you for not only sharing your journey and teaching your children and embracing, what you went through and using it maybe as a learning opportunity for your children or your friends and, like you said, your husband. So, for people that have never experienced what you have, if you could give us like a visual picture, because you said that you were here for a year and you were there and you were in Italy, what did that look like? Because we can see stuff that's on TV or in movies, and most of us have probably never experienced what you and your mom experienced. If you could kind of just paint a brief picture of what that looked like that year when you were trying to get to the US.
Yeah, I can pretty vividly remember. I mean, I was 6, so I barely remember our home in Russia, but I remember that whole like travel trip. And I think I don't want to say I had to grow up early or quicker, or, whatever the saying is, but I just remember my mom's family, because my dad's family was already all over here. So my mom's family, they took us to the train station, and a couple of them came with us. We had to pack all of our belongings. So we had like giant suitcases and giant things with us. And then we had to go to the train station. I remember my uncle boarded the train with us, and then we had to go to another place where we boarded a bus. And then after boarding the bus, I remember my mom was, and I'm gonna cry now, like, she was essentially saying bye to like her country. And so she was taking a very long time. And I didn't get that as a kid, because I was like, let's just go, let's go. So I remember sitting on the bus, because I was like, I'm getting on this bus. And I remember like watching my mom as she's saying goodbye to my uncle. And, she was crying and I was crying and everybody was crying. But I didn't realize that, like, the significance of what's gonna happen, because after the bus, it was the airplane that took us to Vienna, and then from there, like, the whole journey started, right? But taking all of these transportations, I just remember that. My mom was like, "Isn't this fun? We're, you know, traveling by bus and train and plane," and I'm just like, "Okay, this is great." And when we got to Vienna, they didn't have our housing yet, so we slept, like, on our luggage at the airport that night once we arrived, and then they put us in housing. And so housing was, like, 2 or 3 bedroom apartments, and you're sharing those with 2 to 3 other families. So my mom and I had a single couple in our room, so literally, like, every bedroom had 2 families, unless you were like a family of 4, and more. So it was my mom and I, and we had this elderly couple that was sharing the room with us. They were in one bed and my mom and I were in another bed. So that was a couple of months. And then same thing, I think we went by train to Italy. So we got to Italy and it was the same thing. We were in more apartments with, 3 to 4 families. And luckily, when we got to Italy, the nice part was that there was 2 other families in our little, like, 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom apartment that had kids. So I had friends. And we were in Italy for so long that they put us into school, because we were there for about 6 months. So we went to school, we were learning Italian, we were, like, essentially getting to know the country, which was nice in a sense. But, I remember there being fights about, like, "Oh, you used my cabinet for your vegetables," or "You used my side of the refrigerator for this," because it is, like, 3 to 4 families in one apartment trying to share all of these amenities. So I remember that from I think more from my mom's side. I remember that from the stories that my mom told. From my end, I also remember just having a lot of fun. We had two other families with kids, them and I, and it was the time where you could run around outside and you didn't have to come back inside until your dinner was ready. So I just remember us burying treasures, and we're like, if we ever come back to Italy, we're going to come to this spot and find our treasure. And so, in our own little way, we were having fun with the situation. So it was very interesting. But I think once we got to the United States, I think that was when I really understood the gravity of the situation, because we met up my dad, and I hadn't seen my dad at that time for about a year. And we got to the apartment that he had gotten for us. And I remember getting ready for a shower that night, and I whispered to my mom, I was like, can you ask him if I can use this towel? And everybody was like, that's your dad. You can ask him it yourself, or you can say, Dad, can I use the towel? But I wasn't used to it. And I wasn't, even though it felt like only a year, for a 5 to 6-year-old, it's like almost a lifetime. So I just remember realizing, oh my gosh, I don't know where I am. I don't know who I'm with. And, I have to get used to this situation. So yeah, I feel like it definitely breaks you down and builds you, right? And even with that, I will say now as an adult, my mom and I have a very, we're best friends, but we're also she's one of the people that I get triggered by the most with just anything. And I have to remind myself that she went through this as a 26-year-old. And, just thinking back to how this must have felt for her, and how this situation not only built me but built my parents as adults. So yeah, I think that's the best way I can describe how it felt being in the moment.
Wow. Well, I mean, you painted such a vivid picture of that. And I've known you for years, but I've never heard you share in depth that part of your experience. And first of all, I was tearing up also just hearing you share about the experience that you went through and what it was like for your mom, and this just all of the uncertainty and how unsettling it must have been, but how the two of you were able to find creative moments and join together and have some fun and find positivity. It just shows so much strength and resilience. And I'm just very moved by your perspective now on looking back on even taking your mom's perspective and having empathy for what it must have been like for her to go through all of that, and just to have your world turned completely upside down. And I can't even imagine how challenging it would be to find a new normal. Like you were saying, you asked your dad if you could use a towel, because you haven't seen him in a year and you're a young kid, and that's centuries when you're a child.
Right.
So it's trying to navigate building a relationship and knowing who each other are again after having that huge period of being apart. What a unique and powerful experience, and just how much resilience you guys have. I'm wondering if you could maybe share one or two things that you feel like now looking back, you learned the most from that experience, and things that going through that taught you now as an adult.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it taught me everything. Now, I feel like mostly it taught me to adapt. I would say that's the biggest thing, where, every new country, every new city, every new place that we've been to, I've had to essentially adapt to the situation, adapt to the language, adapt to the school, adapt to the people. And so I think even now, I was just on a work site visit, and just adapting with the people that I was meeting with and their cultures and all of that. So I think that's been kind of the biggest thing. And I don't think that I realized, obviously, at the time, that it was something. But now, as I move through being a parent and being a working mom and all of that good stuff, I can see how those experiences have helped me through adapting to the different roles that I play and the different places that I go and people I meet. So that's definitely a huge one. I think the other thing is just being very open to and accepting of everybody that I meet and all of the stories that I hear, because I feel like nowadays we're just also consumed with our own stories, which, we should be as part of our own lives, but also just knowing that other people are going through things, and whatever they are going through is the biggest thing in their lives. And so just kind of adapting to that. Oh, there goes the word adapting again, but just, getting to know people and meeting them where they are so that I can, help them either through anything or just work with them, like, to understand where they're coming from. So those would be the two main things.
Well, that sounds like a lot, and it's probably difficult to keep adapting, using that word, or like leaning in. You're constantly leaning in, and you had to move through a lot. You were forced to, again, adapt and grow. Do you feel like this has kind of shaped how you've moved into your adult life, and maybe not even just you as an adult, but as a parent or to your husband, this specific experience of it, once again, adapting, how did it shape you?
Yeah, and again, I think it took me a really long time to even realize that it has shaped me. But growing up, even like the friends that I made or the people that I talked to, I always noticed that they were very different than me, but also very similar to me. So like some of my best friends growing up and even to this day in adulthood, they are also either Russian Jewish refugees, or they're Latino or other people of color. And I've always tried to understand that pattern, but I think it's because I can relate to them. And even though we may not be like exactly the same, it's kind of getting to know that process, and having the like similar experiences that drew us together. So in my adult life, I think that's how I approach things too, is okay, well, I can meet different people, but also how can I find similarities to people? And it's shown in my research that I'm doing for work and focusing on cultural competence. So it's definitely like formed me in the sense and helped me grow as an adult to realize, okay, how do I use my experience to, one, like be an ally to people who may not or may need an ally, or work with people or progress different thoughts and movements, because I have the privilege, one, to do so, but also because I have these specific experiences that can help me like have a specific perspective in it. So I think that's essentially how it's shaped me. And again, like growing with my kids, I think a lot of like my parents were very, super, like, if you can imagine all the Russian like strictness, that's what they were. And so now I'm taking what do they call it? Breaking the cycles and doing very different way of raising my kids than my parents raised me. And so I feel like I was able to take all of the good things that came out of that experience, and then all of the things that I can improve with, one, raising my kids, but two, in my career field and with my friends and all of that.
Well, first you made me tear up, and now you have me blown away by your resilience. I commend you for that. You are such a brave person. And now, congratulations. I believe you are a citizen, correct, of the US?
Yes. So
And
oh, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, if you want to share light on like how that process was for you after everything that you had been through with your mom and being so young, maybe for those that don't know how that process worked, what was the citizenship process like for you?
Yeah. So I feel very lucky that my mom was actually, she did everything before I became an adult. So so when you're a refugee, so it's a little bit different than coming here on a green card, because when you're a refugee, you have the refugee status for about a year, sometimes longer, sometimes shorter, it depends. So you don't even really have a green card for that first year that you're in the country. And then after that year, they kind of see, especially with the adults, that you didn't commit any crimes, that you're being a productive citizen, and then they assign you a green card. And so you have that green card, and you have to have it for about 5 years before you can apply for citizenship. And then people think like, oh, 5 years, and then you apply and you go through it. But the application just means that it's an application. Like, you still have to wait for them to call you in, and they do interviews and they do testing. So you have to pass, the citizenship certification test, right? Whatever it's called. But basically, it's, asking about things that a lot of people know, some people don't know, but it's like, what are the three branches of US government? And, what does the Supreme Court do? And what is the capital of like the state that you live in? So things like that. And then once you pass that, if you pass it, then you're essentially a citizen, but you have to be then called in for a ceremony. So for me, like, my mom did everything, so I still had to go in and swear in for my naturalization process. And that they actually made the appointment on the same day as my high school graduation. So I had to get to downtown LA the day of my graduation. I did that, and then my parents like drove like crazy people. We got to my high school, and I had like a little speech in my graduation. So I had to get in line and do that. So it was like a pretty big day. But I think
Wow.
yeah,
I'd say so. That's an understatement.
right. Right, exactly. So yeah, so I've been a naturalized citizen since I was 17. But again, I think the biggest thing is that you don't just come to the country and you get a green card. Like, you have that 1 year like probationary, I guess, if you want to call it, period, before you can do that. And then people like my cousin, who's my age, his parents didn't get in his paperwork in time. So he took the naturalization certificate, well, the exam, when he was 18. So, if your parents get it in, awesome. You get to just swear in like I did and go through it. But otherwise, you do have to take that exam. And then it's like testifying in court. You're standing in the middle of a courtroom. You have to put your, what is it, one hand on the Bible, one hand up, and, give an oath of being like a good US citizen. So
Oh my
it's,
gosh. That sounds scary. Why doesn't everyone have to do that?
I know, right?
Anyways. Oh my gosh, what a process. Jeez. Well, I mean, congratulations. And thank goodness your parents did that for you before you turned 18 and helped start the process, right?
Absolutely.
Wow. I mean, I've known, like I said, the nuts and bolts of your story, as your friend, but I am just I have no words. I'm beyond blown away just hearing more of the nuanced things that you have gone through. And excuse my French, but you are just such a freaking badass, Natasha. I am I have mad respect for you and everything you've gone through and just
Aw.
the perspective you have on it and just how you've used this experience as fuel for empowering others and being an ally for those who, maybe are going through something similar or who are a minority in some way or don't have the same privileges as some people do. I think it's beautiful. You have a beautiful heart. And on top of
Thank
that,
you.
you have a successful career and you're an amazing mom and wife and family member and all the things.
You're too sweet.
No, it's true. It's all true. I'm privileged to know you and call you my friend, honestly. And I so appreciate you sharing all of this because I think a lot of this is stuff that a lot of people really maybe have had no experience or haven't heard in depth, like Neelia said in the beginning, other than maybe in movies. I'm curious, maybe for listeners who might be navigating their own challenges similar to stuff that you've gone through, or maybe even different, just based on your wealth of experience and your unique journey and all the things that you've gone through, you probably have just incredible advice for helping encourage people to stay resilient and find their path. So I'm curious if you have any just overall like thoughts or advice or encouragement for people going through something.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think the biggest thing is like knowing your why and then knowing your purpose. And I feel like that helps us all get through, like, to, whatever things we may want to succeed in or get through whatever hardship we want to get through. And like I mentioned, for me, it took me all the way to my mid 20s to start looking back and like seeing, okay, like, I'm not this person that just like assimilated. I am all of the parts and pieces of where I came from put together into like one puzzle piece. And I know we like to say, it's like a melting pot, right? Like we like to say the US is a melting pot, but I think the like more recently and the more accurate statement is that we're more like a salad, right? Some of us are tomatoes, some of us are lettuce, some of us are kale, some of us are carrots, some of us are the dressing, whatever it may be. And hopefully I'm the dressing where like I try to get everyone together and to fall into like one tasty salad. But I think that's the biggest thing is like getting to know like who you truly are and really loving like all of you. And I think that's like the biggest thing that I try to help, like even with my students now, like where did you come from? And you're here, look at you now, like you're at a university. And even if like they did come from privileged backgrounds, whatever it may be, but like still, what are the steps that it took you to get here and how are you going to get to the end of your journey? So I try to use again everything that I've learned about getting to know every piece of me to help others to like know their identities, learn to love who they are, where they came from, and to understand how all of those parts and pieces are helping them succeed and get to their goals, or if they're not on their way to their goals, how can we get you there? How can we get you on that pathway to reaching your accomplishments, your goals, and so on?
Well, you're the most understanding piece of lettuce I've ever listened to. And I think I can speak on behalf of Stacie and I, but we really thank you so much for sharing your story today, Natasha, or AKA Stacie's work wife. It's been such an incredible, teary yet fun, inspiring to listen to your journey and the lessons that you've learned and you've implemented in your life and with your family and children and friends. And I like the fact that your story has the opportunity to touch so many other lives, not only those who are going through something similar, but of their loved ones, like your mother, what she went through. And it's hard to kind of remind yourself like, oh yeah, gosh, I'm short with her, but she went through so many challenges. And like you said, she was only 26 years old. So I need to be more mindful and what she did for you. And you have gone through this process with so much grace. And I really admire you for that. And we really, really appreciate you sharing your story. So with that, if you have any final thoughts.
Well, it was just a pleasure, and thank you for giving me morning tears. Just I I love this because it's like a reminder, right? It's like a reminder to yourself of like where you did come from, because sometimes we get so busy in our day to day that it's like hard to get back to like how we even got here. So thank you, ladies. I really appreciated this time.
Well, we really thank you.
We appreciate you, my dear. And yeah, thanks again for just being so open and sharing your story.
To all of our listeners, thank you for joining us on this episode of Transforming and Thriving. We'll be back every other Monday with more inspiring stories. Please follow us on your favorite podcast app and follow us on Instagram so you can be a part of this community and stay up to date with each episode. Feel free to leave a review so that we can get your valuable feedback and other people can find these powerful stories. We're all in this crazy life together, so let's move through it together. See you there.